Okay, well, good afternoon. Welcome. I'm Dr. Yu Sun with Our Lady of the Lake University. And I have with me today Dr. Mark Green. Welcome to the Department of Leadership Studies, our Leadership Excellent webinar series. And our webinar today is Leading Virtual Works, What Researcher Tells Us. And thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And we appreciate your interest by joining us during your break time. So we will be recording today's session so that if you registered and you will receive a copy of the recording. And to make sure that we get nice, clear recording, I would kindly ask you to please make sure you're muted. Okay. All right. So a little bit background or introduction about ourselves. I am Dr. Yu Sun. I am a professor and also director of the Department of Leadership Study on the Houston campus. And my background was in mathematics and management science. I have been with this organization for 10 plus years with leadership studies. And my focus would mainly be leadership assessment, management, strategies, decision-making, and business analytics. And we will have a co-host or a presenter for us today that she will join us in the second part of the presentation. That is Dr. Esther Gergen. She's also professor of our department, but in San Antonio campus. And her background is in an MBA and a PhD from leadership studies. And she has 25 years experience in industry, higher education, and professional development. And her interest of research would be leadership theory, ethics, strategy, emotional intelligence, conflict management. And then here today with me, as you can see, another presenter is our professor and also department chair of the leadership study department, Dr. Mark Green, and she holds a PhD, MS, MC, and MBA. She has 13 years service as military officers and 30 years in higher education. She's been published more than 100 articles and graduated 100 plus doctoral students. And I'm going to hand my mic to him to introduce a little bit more about himself.
Is it still this? So yes, I came to Our Lady Lake University in 1994. I was a military officer before that. And I get the joy of teaching in our day jobs the brand new doctoral students who don't think they can get a PhD and they're just not sure. I get to teach them the first 2 semesters to help them make that transition from master's work into doctoral work.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and then at this moment, we will still ask you to continue chat in the box, and then just let us know what's your name and then where you're located, what is your current role or your organization. So we'd be happy to know more about you. Okay, and yeah, continue doing that. Okay, and then for our organization, I do want to provide a little bit background about ourselves so you can know who we are and who's offering the webinar. As I mentioned, both Dr. Green and I are from Our Lady of the Lake University, commonly referred to as OLU. And a few facts about OLU that first, we've been around for 128 years. The Sisters of Congregation of Divine Providence broke ground in 1895 and established a private Catholic school, initially for women only. Now today, however, we have a co-educational, sex credit institution with 3 campuses, which are in San Antonio, Rio Grande Valley, and here where I am in Houston. And our Department of Leadership Study has been around for almost 3 decades now. It begins in 1998 in San Antonio and has graduated over 400 doctoral students. And for Houston campus, we established in 2010 and we have more than 100 graduates from our program. Today, the department is a part of a College of Business and Leadership. It's an ACBSP accredited, and it's the only leadership study department in the H-Town that offer leadership study PhD. We are a face-to-face cohort model that has a small faculty to student ratio, so students can easily collaborate with instructor and classmates. Okay, we meet all day and every other Saturday at our easy location. All right. And just a few highlights of the program we offer across all 3 campuses. We have a 2-year trimester program for Master of Science in Organizational Leadership. It's a HyFlex format, meaning that students can take it in person or through computer or anywhere. We also have a 4-year trimester PhD in Leadership Study program, and this is a face-to-face every other Saturday program. We also have some great dual degree options, like master students can get combined MS in organizational leadership and MBA. And we have combination with PhD with organizational leadership MS or with MBA. And in addition to this great flexibility of degree program, we also offer professional development training to organizations. So if you have any need, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to collaborate with you. All right, so at this slide, it shows you some of our many affiliates, that some of the area organization where our graduates work and lead. As you can see, our students have career in a variety of fields. Here's several more of our valued affiliates. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those later when we have a Q&A, if you're interested about any of our program. Now, for now, I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Green for today's webinar.
All right, thank you, Dr. Soon. So we have an important task before we start. So it's a webinar, and I can't see you all because I'm sharing my screen, but what I don't want to see is this. So if you will be kind enough to cooperate, you open up another browser window somewhere, and Dr. Soon is putting these links in the chat. So you can either scan the QR code, you can type in menti.com and the code you see there, or you can take the picture or the long URL up here. But there's going to be interaction as we go through the next 25 minutes, and we need your thoughts, your ideas as we go through it. So if you're able to go to one of those links, then I'm seeing this, but in about 4 minutes, when we get ready, you're going to see this, where it'll come up and say, what do you think about virtuality? You will type something in. I will share that with everybody. So for right now, if you get into the Mentimeter or the Menti, either one site, then you should see the screen that I'm showing on the PowerPoint slide. Okay, just a note about studying virtual workers. So this is what typically happens. You have a coffee room and somebody says, well, in my experience, this is what virtual work is like. And what we do in our department is we say, what does the research actually tell us? So I'll be giving you the results of research on leading virtual workers, not what people have written in their thoughts somewhere, somehow, that they believe might be true. So there won't be very many numbers, but I just have to kind of warm you up for some of the things you'll see. So imagine lots and lots of studies, right? Lots of studies. And each one of those studies will have 2 variables. So for example, each one of these file folders is a study that was done that looked at how much time people spend working virtually, how satisfied they are with their job. We got two possibilities that I'll show you as we go through this. So one is it's a positive relationship. So as one goes up, the other goes up. So if we have positive relationships, it would be that the more time workers spend working virtually, the higher something else is. So in this example, the more time spent working virtually, the higher the job satisfaction. The other possibility, and we do have some of these we're going to focus on, is a negative relationship. One goes up, the other goes down. So for example, it could be that the more time workers spend working virtually, the lower the job satisfaction. So let me show you some of the results from the research. Oh, I'm sorry, I must caution you first. So big do not enter sign. So I like this one. I have a friend that says every time a fire truck goes by my house, on the evening news, I learned there was a fire. Therefore, fire trucks cause fire. So that's a false connection. Or every great leader you can name for me breathes air. Therefore, breathing air makes you a great leader. So those are taking these results too far. That's what we call cause and effect. But we can say, what I'm going to tell you, there's some relationships. So lots and lots and lots of studies, and they generally are going to define virtuality as some combination of email, texting, phone calls, video conference, smartphones, working virtually to do some sort of business. So the literature from that tells us this, and I'll pause just for a second and then I will unpack it for you. So the little bars that go to the right are the more virtual, the more of those things. And I just need to emphasize for you, each of those little bars is the result of multiple studies on virtuality. So it's not one study, it's what the body of literature tells us about that. So the more virtual, the higher each one of these. And we only have one that's negative. The more virtual, the lower these. That's sort of mixed up together. So let me sort it out. So here's the good news. The more virtual the workers, the lower their turnover intentions, their likelihood of saying, I'm leaving this place. That's a good thing. The more virtual, the more autonomous the person feels, the more engaged they are in the workplace, the more satisfied they are with their job, the more committed they are to their job, and the more they actually produce. Now, just make sure we're okay. There is a human being somewhere that doesn't fit this profile, but at the big picture level, I was shocked when I started delving into this, that's what the literature tells us. This is saying virtuality works for these things. So now we're going to hit our first ever Your Opinions. So if you will, at Mentimeter, type in what you think your reactions, why do you think these are positively related? So I will wait you out. So you're going to type, there we go. All right. So why are these positive relationships there with the things we kind of want? We have whenever and wherever and however. Okay, I'll wait for a couple more brave souls to give us your opinions. Perhaps more comfortable. Yeah. We all did the COVID pajama thing. Other thoughts from the audience on why the more virtual, the higher these things we worry about as leaders. That is true. All very good. Thank you all for typing this in. Now, Dr. Sun will be sending you all of this feedback that we're collectively getting today. COVID, I knew somebody was going to ask that, so that's coming up in a second. But some very good reasons that it is flexible, it's comfortable, it's comfortable and working from home, you have the flexibility. So that's the good news. Let me share the not so good news. Now comes the bad news, friends. So far as leaders, somebody says at the high level, virtuality is positively related to these things. We go, great. But it is related also to workers feeling a bit of negativity, feeling burnout, feeling that their work is interfering with their family time. Stress sort of goes with burnout. Those come from different compilations of studies. And that they have a sense of work-life conflict because of this work at home in this familiar. And this one I wasn't prepared for. We began talking about this when email started, this always need to be available, but I got a sense reading all the journal articles, that's a thing that virtuality has caused people to really feel stressed out about. So we're going to do our next Menti and get your feedback. So this is, why do you think that virtuality is related to these undesirable aspects of our workers? And you may have to hit refresh on your browser window, but you should be seeing that question. Okay, so that loss of connection. Yes, the engagement is different working virtually. It is a wonderful point, whoever typed that in, that while it's wonderful that technology allows us to connect globally, they're on different time clocks. It takes the boundaries away. Very nice thoughts, my friends. So I'm going to go back over, share the PowerPoint again. So when I stared at this set of red bars, the negative, I said, well, what can I make out of that? To me, there's sort of three important themes in these sets of bad news that the literature. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself. So somebody typed it on the last screen. What about COVID? So I did look at studies of virtual work only done during the pandemic lockdown. I was shocked. I was really surprised. So during the pandemic lockdown, those same things that were good on the last slide, the more virtual, the better the production, the better the satisfaction. During COVID, just the opposite. The more virtual, the lower the motivation, the lower the job satisfaction, the lower the performance. Now, it's a whole wonderful discussion to have about there's other things that were going on in COVID, like having to wear a mask and spray myself all the time that could be influencing that. But this is what a lot of studies that were done during COVID found. So I'm going to put them side by side, and this might be the difference. So the blue bars I showed you, that the more virtual, the higher the job satisfaction and the commitment and so forth. I didn't go any farther back than 2018, my decision. At what point do you say, well, telecommuting in the year 2000 is just not like virtual teams today? So I cut it off at 2018. So for that 5-year window, to some degree, people maybe have a choice to work virtually. But during the pandemic, people had to work virtually who didn't want to do it in the first place, but they still had to do it. That could be part of the reason we saw that really strange set of results during the pandemic that we don't see when you spread out the window to pre, during, and post-pandemic. So what I was about to say before is if I look at the red bars, these are things that the more virtual, the more we get these things that we wish we weren't having with our followers. I think they fall into three broad categories. One I'd call work-life balance, stress and burnout, and then this need to kind of feel like you always must be available. So I'm going to send you back over to Minty. And this one is, I'm just curious for our room today, where we're going to fall on the virtuality makes it easier to keep my work-life balance. And I feel guilty that I'm working when I should be involved with my family and friends. So as you sort of slide your scale on your side, these numbers will move for us. Those are actually very interesting findings, friends. All right, so then for this room, some feel it's a little easier to balance work and life. And I personally just feel guiltier than perhaps the room does. But that's a good thing that you don't feel that. I'm going to go straight into one more on this one, then, friends. Your thoughts on it again. So now the question is, flip this around. You have a leader. What would you like your leader to do that would make you feel a better sense of work-life balance in this virtual era that we're finding ourselves in? So not do overall, but do as far as virtual workers, what would you like from your own leader to help you feel a bit better work-life balance? Hey, I see accessibility. Yes, the contacting me after hours. That's one more theme coming up in just a second. This feeling like you always have to be connected. Videos and not go to the meetings. Oh, yes, the unplanned things. Whoever typed that one in, thank you. I can remember when we all did the COVID switch, that's starting to happen. So if everybody is seeing this screen for just a second, take it in. We're going to send you these results, these thoughts, but I'm going to send us back over to the PowerPoint. So one of the most popular theories is called being transformational. There's a little bit of evidence. The virtual thing hasn't been studied as enough as we'd like, but that the transformational part works, and that there has to be a little bit more collaboration in the virtuality. But when you think about what you typed, what you saw other people type, then you take that and you flip it around and say, perhaps that is how my own workers are feeling. And perhaps I should focus on a few of those items. So that was the work-life balance. The other kind of cluster of findings from the research is the more virtual, the more stress and burnout workers find. So we're going to do another get your thoughts on it. So this one is, what aspects of virtual work might cause that stress and burnout? Now, whoever typed everything being placed on my calendar, I am not worthy. I love that one. I get up in the morning and suddenly people are putting things on my calendar. The lack of socialization, yes. We may not have enough time to go into this. I'm saving enough time for Dr. Gergen. Um, lack of downtime and breaks, very nice. Whoever typed every meeting must be 30 minutes. There's actually a thing for that. It's called Parkinson's Law, which is that meetings will always expand to the time that they were scheduled for, even if there's nothing to really do. Um, all right, very nice. Um, yes, very nice. A little bit of the tech has, I'm looking at the bottom left-hand corner for me, that tech has allowed more and more things to be quantified and measured. So we will send you these, very interesting. I'll take you back over to the summarizing of that one. So my colleague that's following me, Dr. Gergen, when she talked about what could we do for virtual worker stress, somebody is already ahead of her. They typed it in, but she had looked up some research and found that just virtual coffee breaks, team celebrations for things, and then something that we talk about is called emotional intelligence. But a big one of that is empathizing with workers. And so the person's on the screen before that said micromanaging, everything is measured. That's sort of on the opposite end of empathy. So I'm going to take us to the third piece, and that's this idea of feeling like you cannot untether, that you always need to be available because of the virtuality. So if you'll indulge me one more time, the next Menti screen is up, and it's a couple of it's a sliding scale. So I'm just curious before we get started, how many people feel like you must always be available. Well, for this particular group is a somewhat learned and professional group. This is troubling, right? This always be available. It's not even fear of missing out. It's I must check my email before I go to bed. I must check my email first thing in the morning. I must, even when I'm on the treadmill. Thank you for that. So we have just one last one to do here. And so it's that same exact thing, if you will, friends. It's what would you like your leader to do so that you don't feel like you always have to be connected? So if you'll go to Menti one more time, I will put that screen on. So the question is, what would you like your leader to do so you didn't quite feel so much like you always have to be connected? I love the boundaries. A lot of boundaries, very nice. Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. How fascinating. Yes, indeed. All right, so then that's going to be one friend that you all flip around in your own leadership to say perhaps whether you want to kind of think about it or not, perhaps your folks are feeling that as well. So we had a little bit of this in our textbook answers. Um, Suggested deadlines so people don't have to think I must get it now. How soon do I need this back? And then it was a big one over there in the themes that people typed. What constitutes work hours? Now that was perfect timing. So we're getting ready to be joined by my colleague, Dr. Gergen. I'm going to wait till we can see your smiling face, Dr. Gergen. You are there. So this was one last one from me. Just because of time, there's another part of this that is about leading virtual teams. Was just, we want to respect your time. So it has already been recorded. It's available. Dr. Sun will put it in the chat it's a MP4 of a PowerPoint presentation on what we learned about virtual teams. The highlight of it all, if you watch it, is for virtual teams doing well. A big part of that is how long the team has been together. Now that's true generally, but it seems to be a little bit more important for virtual teams because of this two-dimensional lack of cues kind of thing than it is on traditional teams. So, Dr. Gergen, I will turn it over to you for the sort of takeaway at the end.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Green and Dr. Soon. Thank you all for joining us and spending your, I'm sure, very valued lunchtime with us. Hopefully, we're delivering some content that is really useful for all of you as you invest some of this time in developing these ideas. What I'm going to present in tandem with Dr. Green is, now that we kind of understand what the literature says and the research says about leading virtual teams, some of the challenges that have been presented with virtual teams, now we can talk a little bit about, so what do we take away as leaders when we try to apply this knowledge and kind of navigate leading virtual teams in a more effective and efficient manner. And so some of these helpful insights are included in this presentation, and which will also go out to you. But one of the key themes that we know from leaders that are trying to apply these insights and learnings is that the idea that we went from presence to virtual has really been an impact to teams and to the leader-follower dynamic. So we went from being physically present with each other to being virtual. And because of that, there's some internal group dynamics and external support mechanisms that really do matter as we try to navigate being better at this virtual process and virtual dynamic. So internal group dynamics tend to be affected from the presence to the virtual, because when we are interacting with each other, there's a much lower ability to view nonverbal cues when we're virtual than where we're next to each other or present among each other. So that's kind of one of the internal group dynamics. Also, there's less of an ability to connect, and that'll come in another theme as we speak to some of these insights and how we apply this. And then, of course, external support mechanisms have changed. When we're physically present with each other, there may not be as high a need for external support like technology, troubleshooting, and resources that we might not think about when we're physically present versus the virtual world. It's also really important in the idea of going from physical presence to virtual that we focus on ensuring role clarity from a leadership perspective. Because virtual does create a little bit of disconnection, it's really important that we ensure that people understand exactly what their roles are, who's managing what, because it's not as easy to pop into someone's office and say, are you covering that or am I covering that? What did you understand what we were supposed to do? So it's really a heightened importance in ensuring that there's role clarity among the members. It's also important to encourage coordination protocols because of this sort of transition and chaotic feeling that tends to come with the change. It's important that coordination protocols are established, even documented and really formally established and systemized, because when we're physically present with each other, the protocols and processes we follow may be quite different when we're virtual. We're not in the same offices, we don't have the same support systems, and so those protocols really are important to establish. Visibility is key for leaders in the virtual world. You might think that counterintuitive because we're not physically there, right? We're virtual, but visibility is key in making the team feel like they're able to achieve results, so that they're not kind of in the virtual world and forgotten, that we really are present, engaged in tracking what support they might need and how they're progressing towards the accomplishments or the goals. Then the other thing, another theme that has surfaced is that there's computer-mediated communication now. When we go from physical to virtual, much of our communication is mediated by this technology that we're experiencing, even in our session today, right? So participation, tends to be more balanced, which is good. In other words, more people tend to participate because you can put something in the chat, you can raise your hand. However, that participation, even though there's more people balanced and participating, it tends to be less personal. So sometimes people can actually disconnect, turn off their video, not necessarily engage in the chat. So it tends to be less personal when it's virtual than when it's face-to-face. Again, along with that idea of not as many cues in body language when we're virtual. It's important that we understand that we need to motivate teams to engage them in continuous communication, because primarily this is what builds trust. So when we have that computer-aided communication and we don't have a personal connection, we might have a hard time building the bonds of trust that we're able to when we're physically with each other. And then it's also important from a computer-mediated communication perspective that informal communication activities such as things like virtual coffee breaks and celebrations, they really do matter. So being able to connect informally online as much as we connect for formal meetings and tasks that need to get done becomes more important to building those connections. So a third theme is this idea of leadership style, which we talk about often in the leadership discipline. As you've seen in much of the presentation that Dr. Green offered, leadership style really does have an impact on a lot of follower outcomes, as well as how effective we're seen as leaders. So from a virtual application perspective, transformational leaders of virtual teams tend to reach higher levels of team performance. So it has translated from the physical to the virtual. And transformational leaders are seen as or perceived as more intelligent, creative, and original by virtual teams. So all of those great things about transformational leadership does indeed transfer to the virtual world and leading virtual teams. So it's important to keep at the forefront of our imagination as leaders that we need to continue to practice those modified for virtual participation, right? And then virtual teams tend to share leadership, which is good, meaning that there's more shared leadership. There's more assignment of responsibility to the team as a whole than to necessarily the person in charge. And so that tends to generate more collaboration and better collaborative decision-making in the virtual realm. And then the fourth and final theme on the insights is that there's competencies of a virtual leader that virtual teams tend to look for or seek out or recognize as helpful. So the first is, we talked a little bit about it in the other themes, but clear and concise and effective communication is really important. Again, there's a lot of nonverbal cue and nonverbal communication that's lost in the virtual world. So being clear and concise is really important. Effective conflict management skills have been shown to be very desired in the virtual realm because of that computer-aided communication and some of that loss of connection. There tends to be a experience of conflict, and in the virtual world, it's a little bit more challenging to manage that conflict than in the physical realm. And so effective conflict management skills, that they're translatable to the virtual team leadership, is really important. And then emotional intelligence comes up as a really desired, effective skill for leading teams in the virtual. And these things include things like self-awareness. So being aware of how I'm perceiving and sensing my own emotions and how I'm internalizing the cues and emotions of others. Empathy, as we know, is really important from an emotional intelligence perspective, but from a leadership perspective as well. When we're trying to navigate that virtual world, trying to read those cues that we don't always catch, and then also trying to build those connections that aren't physically there, being able to empathize and put ourselves in the other person's shoes becomes really important. Promoting the exchange of knowledge and information, as we mentioned, it becomes much more collaborative when leadership is shared, and that shared leadership tends to happen a lot more in the virtual world than we see in the physical realm. And then honest communication to support problem solving, also really important, goes along with that clear and concise communication that's needed in the virtual world. Questions about some of these insights or leadership applications? You can just place them in the chat if you have them.
And then I think I'm turning it back over to Dr. Soon for a wrap up. So, Dr. Soon?
Sorry, I was muted. Well, thank you both, Dr. Green and Dr. Gergen, for sharing the insights from both research aspect and also practical application. So folks, if you attended our webinar before, and you might notice today's is a little bit academic related. As professors from our Department of Leadership Study at OLU, we are very dedicated to fostering those scholarly excellence. So today's discussion really reflects some of those essentials of what we do for our program, graduate program, which is a commitment to critical thinking, research-driven insight, and also deep understanding of leadership dynamics. All right, with that being said, I want to, will you continue type into your questions in the chat box, and I would like to make a few announcements for future events. And then, so the next one that we have in March 19th is our panel, leadership panel. The topic is leading teams through change. That we've invited 4 panelists from different industry around the different locations in Texas that will tell us, during this change, in particular for pandemic or virtual, those switch, how we as a leader to adapt the leadership style to fit into those change. So if you have not registered, here's the QR code. Take a moment to scan it and register for that. Okay, and for our next webinar is Are Leaders Born or Made? Okay, so that also we want to provide some insight from the research perspective. Because you often hear people talking, it's a debate, but really what the scholar or the research study has been found any result about that topic. So that will be very interesting topic. Please, grab a coffee and invite your friends to join us for that. I will send a follow-up link for invitation and also QR code. Now this is a QR code. Please take a picture or scan it right now. This provides all the events that provided by our Department of Leadership Study, which we have total of 5 webinars and panels. So feel free to register, and we provide it as our service to the community. So it is a free event for you to attend. Right, and then so in 2 days, we also have an info session. If any of you or your friends or family member are interested about a program in leadership studies, just please feel free to join us. It's virtual this Thursday on February 22nd at 6 o'clock. And again, scan this QR code and RSVP so we can expect your coming. And during that time, it's not only our admission team, but also the faculty members from our department would like to tell you more about our program. Okay, so just can give you a little bit overview about our program, leadership, PhD in leadership studies. What Dr. Green and Dr. Gergen just covered for today's topic barely, I think, touched base with some of the leadership theory, which we offer for our first 2 courses, 9310 leadership theory, and also the 9320, the organizational leadership strategies, as well as oral communication for leaders. So those are really academically provided for in our program, but also very applicable for the real world. Okay, so it's a 4-year program, just an overview for you to take a look. Okay, and if you have any questions regarding for our program, so here I can summarize what we have offered for all 3 campuses for our department, that we offer both master and doctoral degree in leadership. As a matter of fact, Dr. Gergen is the director of the master program, and I am the director of the Houston PhD program. So if you want to reach out, feel free to shoot us email directly. And we are in the H-Town, San Antonio, and RTV, the only leadership study department that offers a PhD. You might see some other PhD program in leadership, but they are like a concentration from a department of business. But we are actually a solo discipline that offers leadership studies. And it is a face-to-face program, as I mentioned. And it's a cohort model with a very small faculty to student ratio, which we try to meet students' interest and their needs. And we meet every other Saturday to support working professionals. And the program we offers are 2-year trimester master and 4-year trimester PhD program with option of dual degree with MBA and also our MSOL, Master in Organizational Leadership. And on top of that, we also offer professional development training. So if your organization, your institute, you need anything that like leadership training, and feel free to reach out to us, and we'd like to sit down and then tailor for your need to provide those professional trainings. All right, so for today's webinar, we will offer the complimentary tool, which also including the result that we use from the Mentimeter, so we can know everyone's input. And so check your email for those tools, and also we will send you the recording for today's session, and as well as some of the upcoming event flyers. Okay, and then please feel free to share this with your community. We'd love to have you for our next event. Okay. All right. Please feel free to stay and then chat with our faculties, and then or any questions you brought it up. I'm going to unmute everyone, so feel free to talk. You're unmuted. As long as you unmute yourself, you should be able to talk now.
So I'm not sure. This is Dr. Gergen. Hello, everyone. I'm not sure if Liz Aguilar is still with us, but you placed a great question/point on our chat here about how collaborative decision making, and you've noticed a sudden transition of limiting transparency in the virtual realm. That's a great point. So leadership has been observed to be a bit more participative and collaborative virtually, but the virtual world does allow us to sort of screen or censor information more than the physical presence world. And so I can see how that definitely is a dynamic that might be happening. Thank you for sharing that.
And Dr. Sooner, we're wrapping up, I think. Is that correct?
Yes. Okay. I don't see more questions, and we thank you again for your participation
Yes.
for today's webinar, and we look forward for your participation for our upcoming event. Have a good weekend. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.